over water. The scenic beauty back there is unbelievable, and it's a gem in our town. So
Okay,
that's my vote.
thank you.
You bet.
And if I could digress for 1 second, I have to say, my grandmother was born in 1890, lived in Cambridge. In the 1990s, she wrote down her story of her life. When she was growing up in Cambridge, she would take the train to Littleton to go to the lake. I'm not sure it was Long Lake, but she wrote.
Of course it was.
She came to one of the lakes out in Littleton, which is just amazing to me.
It's a beautiful, beautiful place.
So I have a longer history here than even Keith knows. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Joan, and we'll take some additional notes.
Paul Railroad, King Street. It's out of curiosity, I keep hearing a lot about use of fields, overuse of fields. Is there a general guideline of how many hours per day a field is to be used, should be used, should not be used? How much time between big events on a field? Because before we start talking about, let's put fields on all these open lands, let's have an idea of what we really need for fields. I'd like to know, kind of have a general feeling for, we got 10 now, we need another 5. Or is it we have 10, we need another 20? What are we looking at? Because it's kind of, it's dark to me. I don't know what really the use is. I don't have, my son's really small. He's not using any of these fields. And honestly, I like the open land. I'd hate to see it all taken away for giant fields if we can improve what we have. Just point of order kind of thing. Before we get into let's throw fields everywhere, what do we really have and how well used are they and how much use can they get before we have to redo stuff?
I would tend to defer to the folks who manage the fields, because I know that you can use a field a lot more if you've got certain active management of the field. If the field has been designed to have good drainage, you can get a lot more people out there because it can handle a lot more. If you've got active irrigation out there on the field, it can sustain a lot more use. But it was really dependent. So I'd leave it to the gentleman who maintained it to make suggestions on that behalf.
Yeah, and since my wife's not here, I'll throw in a 300 King Street, Castle in the Trees. There's a big committee working on rebuilding it too, but it's ended its kind of existence there, so we're gonna have to rebuild that one eventually. So that might be nice if there's more assistance for that playground.
We have the problem in Littleton, it's a good problem to have. We have more participation in youth sports and high school sports than our fields can sustain. So is there a number that, I don't know that there's an exact number. I can tell you that most of our fields, the fields that you see listed on the slide there, most of them are used from 3 o'clock in the afternoon till 8 o'clock at night. So if the school teams are out there from 3 to 5 or 6 o'clock, as soon as we're getting off the fields, then the youth teams are coming on to do their practices. So 3 to 8 Monday through Friday, and then oftentimes a better part of the day on Saturdays and Sundays in linear scheduled games with one game ending and another game coming on. So whatever that number is, it's safe to say we're well over it on our fields, and then it's just repeated usage. And again, it's a problem that's a good problem to have because there's so many families involved and so many youth athletes and so many scholastic athletes in Littleton.
And in my opinion, I don't think that, me personally, I don't want to speak for anybody else in the room, but with the fields, the need for more fields, I don't think it's simply just taking this undeveloped land that we have throughout town and turning it into fields, because I like open space too. And I think there has to be a smart approach. And, so I'm not looking to say, I'd like to see a plan that comes up and addresses that we can, if we're going to add additional fields, there's a cost to maintaining those as well. And I don't want to see those, again, get overused. And that's why I think we looked at a broad approach last year of taking some of the existing facilities we have, which haven't been taken care of, and looking at other options. And as we said at the time, one was a turf field, which would accommodate many of the high school athletics and take some of the wear and tear off these grass fields that we're utilizing every place, that we're overusing. Because again, you know, in Acton, for example, the turf fields are used from 8 o'clock in the morning till, you know, 12 o'clock at night. They're lit and they are used. You could never do that on a grass field. You need 20 grass fields to get that much use without destroying them. And so that's an approach we've looked at, and I think it's something that you know, as a town, as a committee, that's something we should explore.
Okay, so what I want to do now, I just want to sort of set the stage about how we're going to approach these potential areas. So we were given a list by a town of potential, thank you, locations for you know, either parcels that are already town-owned or 2 private parcels, Cooper Farm being one and Fletcher being the other. And these were being put forth as potential locations for additional either recreational facilities or open space and recreational facilities. So the 2 aren't necessarily incompatible if you have a large enough parcel. And as Mark mentioned, you really have, or somebody mentioned, you really have to look at the characteristics of the land to figure out what makes the most sense there. But what we wanted to do tonight, and this gets back to not quite the dollar value or, you know, how you assign, you know, preferences through voting with your dollars. But what we want to do is end the evening with a, I don't know how many of you participated in meetings where you're given little dots and you put them up on the flip charts, and that's a way of voting or getting a visual sense of what potential recreational scenarios might have the most interest in, again, among the people here tonight, because that's the best you can always do. So we have I'll just walk through the list. We have land behind the police station. We have the Delaney Drive open space, White Street and Russell Street here, the Russell Street Elementary fields behind, right here behind Town Hall, the Morgan property, the Cooper, Fletcher, Shaker Lane, Surrey Road, St. Anne's. Oh, those are the existing, sorry. So the ones in green here are the potential. And I've written the names up there. So what we want to know is, of the uses that were mentioned tonight, either fields, trails, recreation center, which is, I think, the 3 that really, you know, we've heard a lot about. Which of these parcels lends themselves to developing those uses? And what we want to do is end the night with these, or another subset if we run out of space, of ideas for what might reasonably go, or what you would suggest would go on each of those properties, or could go. And then we're going to give you a certain number of dots and ask you to get up and vote with your dots on what preferences. It may be that they're all across the board. It may be that 1 or 2 really come up with a, you know, a strong preference here. But it's just one way of getting some sense. In order to do that kind of dot voting, we have to make sure that on each of the properties, we've identified discrete items, because if somebody says, I want a recreation center, that's a discrete item. If somebody says, you know, rec center and trails. So we may have to play around with a little bit of how things are shown so that there's no confusion when you go, you know what you're putting your dot on. So what I'd like to do is just sort of ask people to suggest for these properties that we've listed here, and maybe I'll, sure.
Square footage is of each of these fields?
The fields or these properties? We don't have that here tonight, but we could certainly, when we summarize tonight's comments, we could provide that, or that's probably something that the town has fairly readily available. Yes?
Yeah, some of the fields are already owned by the town, but they're not the ideal location. They may be peripheral, maybe it's good for practice, but they've been sort of ignored. I mean, I think you, look, you know, such as behind the police station, Delaney Drive, open space. Yeah, those were set aside actually for fields. And, yeah, it may not be someone's ideal location, it's a large enough, but it can accommodate something and relieve some of the pressure.
Right.
And I think that should be addressed.
Yeah, so any thoughts that you can give us on specifics? We're looking for very specific by these parcels.
What parcel is that?
There are two, behind the police station.
Behind the police station,
Here.
what do you mean?
Yeah.
Police station.
Yeah, sorry, just abbreviating things here.
Sure, and I was mentioning there's, you know, not ideal spaces, but they're sort of marginal, and they could be used for practice. Behind the police station's one, and Delaney Drive open space. In fact, I was on the planning board when it was decided to set that aside for that explicit purpose, and it never was used.
Okay.
And also, it's worth pointing out, there's a lot of fill and stuff that's leaving the point that's available to be used, and that's sort of a lost opportunity as well, and that will disappear. Those could be used there.
Okay. The other thing I noted when we put these on the map was they do tend to be in the northern part of town. Some on, you know, well, all the potential ones are on the east here. And I heard a lot about sort of centralizing things, making a locus of activities. So it would be interesting to hear where you think that centralized, you know, mega complex might go.
Yeah, and what was mentioned, just to summarize some of the comments, by where the track is, that's close to the school. You know, I guess that's listed as Russell Street Middle
Okay,
School.
White and Russell.
That's right,
Russell.
Russell Street
Yeah.
White. And that's also a good opportunity because it's nearby. And
So for
yeah,
that
ideally
would be for more of the, a larger complex of facilities.
I'm not going to talk to that. Other people can talk to
One field?
Yeah,
Okay, so for
but there's a
one
good
that-
opportunity that should be taken advantage
Okay.
of.
So this is not the central locus that
No,
people are
Well, there are
It's
other
just-
things there too, a track, the school, and, you know.
but you
and
could
alumni
fit
field.
in, you think, one more field?
Right, but that is
Okay.
in close proximity to a number of other
Right.
active recreation resources. So in some ways, that's very attractive, and that's been
Right.
mentioned by other folks.
Okay. Back here?
Sorry, I'm just a little bit confused about what we're doing right now. Are we putting up the various options right now, and then we're going to vote on those options?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're not confused at all. Yeah.
For further clarification, we're going to, when we place a dot, we're voting for a specific type of recreation at a location. Is that going to be specified?
However we put these, however you articulate them as we transfer them
Excellent.
to these sheets.
Okay.
Yes, we do want to be as
Since most of these
specific.
are sort of real estate names, boom, 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 we
Right.
might have something that's an other category because
Yeah.
if we're talking about a multifunction room or gym space, it might not fit what's shown on the map.
Okay, yeah, I should mention that we're going to add, we can add additional locations that aren't, yeah, or comments. So if it's beyond one, if it doesn't fit into one of these, tell us where you think something might go.
As far as looking for centrally location fields to have multiple things, I think the Cooper property would be perfect for that. I also think the Fletcher property, they're across the street from each other, basically. So now you can have a huge complex of walking trails, playing fields, parking, which is always key. We don't build enough parking when we build fields or anything in town. The Morgan property is another location, it already backs up to the Proudy field, trails. So that would be a good location for fields, and you know, parents are dropping their kids off for practice. They could take a hike up into the woods there, the Proudy property.
Okay, and that, you said that was part of
Coop-
Fletcher?
No,
What's the next-
Proudy, Morgan is
Oh, okay.
one.
Morgan. Over
I-
here?
Morgan, yeah. It
Over
butts
here?
up to, on your left, it butts up to the Proudy Woods already. If we're looking for central locations to try to
No,
make,
Morgan, right over here.
you know, make multi-use out of these spaces, with the white field, the white Russell Street, you're only gonna get one additional field in
Okay.
it. Does it help? Absolutely. The same
One
with the
more
police
field.
station, but now you're starting to single locations around town.
Sure.
If the people want a central location, those three properties that the town doesn't even own two of them, who knows what could happen?
Okay, can you pass the mic back?
Another central location is just here at Town Hall. We have the fields behind us, and we have the tennis courts, and there are additional lands here that abut the middle school property, so that could be used in conjunction.
All right, that would
For
be
a
separate
central
because that's
location.
already owned here. So Cynthia's got that.
The Cooper property has great space out front for open space. It has some very nice level space in the back. That would be great fields. And it has the ability to connect those with trails. It has pretty much everything that you would want with doing some kind
Okay.
of complex like
So
that.
you would, that, what's already up there would capture what your thoughts are? What's already been written pretty much captures that? Great. Okay.
Can't read it, it says multiple fields, multiple uses, trails, etc. The trails and neighborhood sites include parking, could be the site of major facilities. Does that work, or would it need to be amended?
No, I think you're saying that captures what you were trying to say, yeah.
Open space too, right?
Should say open space in the
Open
Oh, open
space
space.
too.
Yeah,
Multiple
right out front,
facilities and open
very
space.
visible. Lovely open space.
Got it.
Yeah, and there are different types of soils there, and one of the things that the town did recently was acquire Church Meadows contiguous to it as prime agricultural land, as contiguous, and the idea was that there could be farming also on that area. And so the connectivity aspect of it is prime agriculture. In fact, it was suggested farming and scenic views in the front and in back, a sports field. That would be perhaps the right layout, using the advantages of the town's investment array in Church Meadows and what the soil has to offer.
Okay, so you want to add a separate line item for agriculture?
In front, and then that's been an ongoing theme.
Great.
It's, it's a type of conservation, type of open space. So prime agricultural land in front, contiguous to the Church Meadows town-owned agricultural land next to it.
I'd like to add that in just about any place where you put a thing, you can also put a trail. And I don't see that they do not exclude one another. And we have very few facilities for handicapped accessible trails. And so if there are any flat spaces that are going to be developed into fields of any kind, that would be something to add. That doesn't matter which one you put it on, or all of them.
Okay, so that would be a separate, all-inclusive handicap trail concept, which will also be available for you to put your dot on.
And as we all are going to age, apparently,
You think so?
I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, in the back?
Addressing and looking at the selections that you've given us up there, I really see it. I mean, I'm a lifelong resident of Littleton. I work for the town, and I know a lot of these areas very well. And I look at it as it comes down to a couple of locations that really serve the purpose. Delaney Drive, you might get a field in there. Out behind the track at the high school, you might get a field in there. But are they prime locations? No. Is that really where we want to spend our money to create athletic fields? I don't think so, because you're going to be repeating that. You can't create a facility. You might create a field. And if that's what we want to do, that right now it's open space. It may not be a huge parcel, but I just don't know that that's where we want to go. I look at Cooper property, we don't own it, and yes, it does. You can see just by the list that we've put together, it serves a lot of purposes. It meets a lot of different needs for the people, at least in this room, some of the things that we're looking for. The big item there is we don't own it. To me, I look at the Morgan property, we own that right now, and it also could meet a lot of different needs. It does have trails out there right now. I get the sense from some of the people already in the room that like that we own it, and they don't want to see that change, and I understand that. But it is also an area that we should look to say that right now that is trails, and it's there. That's a potential that could also be very similar to what we're listing there on Cooper. Again, I would love if somebody wants to come up with money and buy Cooper, I'm all for it. I just don't know if the town has that money available.
So you would say that Morgan could hold more?
I think Morgan offers many of the
more
same. It's a big site. It's a nice.
Okay.
It's another large parcel. But I see those two as being the primary locations that can serve a lot of different purposes. Surrey, that location, that's within a neighborhood, it's extremely ledgy up there. I don't know what you can do up there for athletic fields.
Okay.
I know that it was slated for an athletic field, but I think you'd be doing an awful lot of blasting. And one other note.
Ledgy.
Sorry, yeah, very ledgy. One other note on the material that's coming out of the point, that's some of the worst material you could ever put underneath an athletic field. It's all clay.
Oh, okay.
So I don't think we'd want it, if we're really looking to create fields, that's not what you want to put there.
Okay.
So, one thing I haven't seen, and it's been a little bit of a discussion earlier, but renovation and repair of existing. And again, I don't know if it fits this, and it's not something that's up there, but it is existing fields, is the ball fields at Shaker Lane School. There's 3 ball fields there. It's a huge amount of land. It strikes me that there's room for more. Now, parking would be an issue, but some redo of some of those facilities may help
Okay, we're
address some of those
capturing
needs.
that up.
Plus,
there,
one of those fields drains incredibly poorly, so if it's any rain, we can't use it for
Mm-hmm.
a couple days and we're stuck. So, I think there's opportunities for some renovation of the existing fields
Mm-hmm.
again. I want to make sure we capture it.
Okay, we got it right up there. In the back, Mike?
I'm a little concerned if we're moving soon to a vote, so to speak, with the dots. The feeling that I'm getting, and I want to participate on this, and I'm intensely interested in fields, but I have other priorities too, personally and as a member of a committee. My concern is that, for one, that the map situation, we're only looking at real estate. I made a comment of that before, so that leaves out of the discussion some types and categories of recreation. So when I actually physically place my my sticker, I want the committee to hear this more than anybody. It feels like to me that most effectively my input is on fields, and so I've heard the discussion, and when I put the sticker on there, I don't know how many I'll get, so to speak, but I think this is putting a lot of effort into one category of recreation. I don't see another way for my
Okay,
voice to be heard after the meeting's done.
Do other people want to see some of, like, the community center, bike trails as general categories, so that you can put your dot on there as well? Because we can create that additional list so that you're not only talking real estate. Well, yeah, it's looking at locations and what could go. So if somebody, for instance, has an idea where a recreation center should go, we can put it there. We could also leave it as a separate item so that you can vote for that. Yes.
So on the survey, although I know it didn't have a huge number of residents who participated in the survey, the top 2 items on that survey were bike trails and walking trails. And these specific, I think this is just going off what you're saying, is they're not so much real estate center. I mean, they can be used for that, but you don't want just, if I put a trail going through the Cooper Field, that's not a great use of that real estate. Right. However, having a bike trail that connects the center of town all the way out to the Cooper Field is great, but I don't really see a way to have that input on the
well, actually, if people want to take a stab at drawing some things on the map as well, to capture some of your other thoughts with, lines, maybe things that you want to connect, we could take a few minutes and do that as well. That's another way. I just want to make sure people don't think that once you put your dot on there, that's the end all and be all, and it's a smaller sample than the 270 who responded to the survey. This is just another way of getting the conversation going and capturing what was discussed tonight. But it doesn't mean that it's a vote, as in electing somebody, or that there aren't other opinions. It's just one way to walk away from, with an idea of what the people who came out tonight, and certainly appreciate your coming out tonight, what was discussed. And then that can be, perhaps when we're wrapping up, Keith can talk about, or Andrew, how you want to take this, and do you want to put it up on the website? Do you want to, get it out to the community and have them also react? Yeah, obviously they won't have the benefit of having been here tonight, but they may have comments and may spur some additional conversation. So that's certainly, but it's always, it's just a snapshot of who came tonight, what was discussed. It doesn't mean that something that gets, 10 votes gets into the plan and something that gets 2 doesn't. It doesn't work that way. It's not like we're electing a president or something. So just wanted to, make sure that people aren't too hesitant about, the voting process. Okay.
Hi, Rick Finley again. I chaired the Cooper Committee, which looked into ways of using